Everyone. It's really great to just see you this morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Gessho, and I'm a senior student at the Village Zendo. I see people I know and people I don't know. Welcome. For those of you who do see me a lot, you might notice I have a different background, and it's surprisingly strange to be in a different place. I've been basically inside my apartment for many months, as I'm sure some of you have, and I know others haven't, but I have. And so I'm in a new place for the first time in a long time. And it seems, in some sense, it seemed almost impossible to be this new person and to give a talk from this place. Uh, but here we are. So I'm going to jump right in. Chao, teaching the assembly, said, "The ultimate path is without difficulty. Just avoid picking and choosing. As soon as there are words spoken, this is picking and choosing. This is clarity. This old monk does not abide within clarity. Do you still preserve anything or not?" At that time, a certain monk asked, "Since you don't abide in clarity, what do you preserve?" Chao replied, "I don't know either." The monk said, "Since you don't know, teacher, why do you nevertheless say that you do not abide in clarity?" Chao said, "It is enough to ask about the matter, bow, and withdraw." So for whatever reason, this is the koan that most often comes to my mind, and for many months now, it's sort of like when I think of a koan, it's where I go, and I think it's in part because this first line, this gambit that Chao opens with, is somehow haunting me or trying to say something to me. So maybe we can sit here together with this and explore it a bit together. So I think many of you will recognize the main character in the story, Chao or Zhu, who is one of the very greatest of all the Zen masters and is the main character in many a koan. And there actually are more than one koan where he is giving this basic talk. So we're catching him in the act of giving his own dharma talk. And so Chao, teaching the assembly, said, "The ultimate path is without difficulty. Just avoid picking and choosing." So this line is not original to Chao. He's quoting from this older text called the Hsin Hsin Ming, which you can translate as something like the faith mind inscription. Sometimes people say Ming, the Min part is about a text, and the Hsin Hsin is faith in mind, trust in mind, or the faith mind, depending on how the translator understands it. And we really don't know who wrote it. It's considered to be the first sort of Zen poem. It's the first great Chinese Zen teaching poem, Chan teaching poem. And it's attributed traditionally to Jianzi Senkan or Sensang in Japanese, Sosan, who was the third of the great Chinese ancestors, the third in the lineage, Bodhidharma and then Huike and then Senkan. He died in 606, so that can give you kind of a rough idea of the possible age of this text, although some people think it came a bit later, some scholars. And so this comes from that sort of legendary period where we don't know that much about the teachers. They've all turned kind of into myths. But during this period is when this form of Buddhism, this meditation-focused form of Buddhism, first was meeting the Chinese strains of thought. So you can hear Taoism and to some extent Confucianism in all of these early talks. There really isn't a distinction between the Taoist ideals and the Buddhist ideals in many of these ways of thinking. So when Chao Chu says or Senkan says the ultimate path, he's really saying the same thing as what we also hear in other contexts as the Tao or the way. It's the same idea that's conjured by the Tao Te Ching, which I imagine many of you have read at some point or encountered at some point. And the Tao Te Ching begins also sort of enigmatically and beautifully. I'll just give you the beginning of it in Stephen Mitchell's translation. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only manifestations. So you can see some sort of echoes back and forth there already. And the Tao is actually just the word also for road. It's the most plain and ordinary word for road or path. And so it's both the ultimate path and, the ordinary path, the street outside your own door. And you don't need to choose which Tao is the Tao. Chao Chu, teaching the assembly, said, the ultimate path is without difficulty. Without difficulty. Just avoid picking and choosing. As soon as there are words spoken, this is picking and choosing, this is clarity. This old monk does not abide within clarity. Do you still preserve anything or not? So this is a koan in part about the limitation of words and concepts. As soon as there are words spoken, this is picking and choosing, this is clarity. In other words, as soon as you start speaking to yourself, you already have this concept of picking and choosing and a concept of clarity. And each concept acquires boundaries, distinctions, oppositions, values. Picking and choosing is set up as bad, clarity is set up as good. So as soon as the idea of picking and choosing arises, you're already picking and choosing. But this is equally true of clarity. As soon as the notion of clarity arises, you're picking and choosing. So what does it mean to say that the ultimate path or the Tao, or you might put this in other words as the very fullest realization of our human lives, is something which, in most traditions, that ultimate path is considered to be very, very difficult to achieve. What does it mean to say that it's easy if you just do this one thing? So I wanted to share with you a little bit of the Hsin Hsin Ming because for whatever reason, it's not a text we talk about very often. And actually, I had a thought to just read the whole thing and have that be my dharma talk. But I resisted. Maybe I should have. Some Zendos chant the Hsin Hsin Ming the way that we chant the Song of the Jewel Mirror Awareness and the Identity of Relative and Absolute. These are all some of the very foundational teaching poems in the Zen tradition. And there's something about when you chant a poem like that, it puts the words into the air, and it's a little bit different from studying a text, where you're bringing a certain kind of a part of your mind to bear on understanding it. But when the words come through your mouth on your own breath, they rise into the air and they settle in different parts of your body on different days. And certain phrases may rise out of the sound of the poem and just strike your heart, strike your ear in an unexpected way. So I think it's good to put them in the air a bit. So I won't do the whole thing, but I'll just give you the beginning. And this is in a different translation. This is in Andy Ferguson's translation, which there are so many translations of it, but this one is a little bit closer to what Cleary, who was translating the koan in the Blue Cliff record, sort of the flavor that he caught. And so it's the one that I like best too, since that phrase is stuck in my mind. Just avoid picking and choosing. If you have neither aversion nor desire, you'll thoroughly understand. A hair's breadth difference is the gap between heaven and earth. If you want it to come forth, let there be no positive and negative, for such comparisons are a sickness of the mind. Without knowing the great mystery, quiet practice is useless. The great perfection is the same as vast space, lacking nothing, nothing extra. Due to picking up and discarding, you will not know it. Obviously in our daily lives, in our regular lives, we're always picking and choosing. This is a part of our minds that's essential actually for our survival and continuity on the earth. And we have to pick and choose in order to function. It's part of our functioning. What's for dinner? Which things do I need to take care of today? Should I take off my mask outside or not? Who should be the mayor of New York? These questions are always with us, and we have to be able to respond to them in some sense with answers, so in some sense as pickers and choosers. Options are all around us, and we feel some to be good and some to be bad, and some are better and some are worse. And sometimes we expend the most energy between two just very slightly different options, slightly better and slightly worse. We can get completely caught up in this aspect of ourselves. And in the middle of our lives, with bombs falling, with autocracies rising, police killing children, disease and suffering everywhere, it can seem impossible and even wrong to consider this idea of avoiding picking and choosing. We must choose, we must act. And I feel this. I, I want to be a person. I want us to be people who respond to the world around us and its realities. So we must choose and we must act. And if this is so, how can we possibly do what Cao Zhu and Senkan are suggesting? What would it even mean? I think one place that we can explore this in a very direct way is in our zazen practice. So lately, I found that my ears kind of prick up when I hear someone describe some aspect of their practice as good or bad. And I especially notice it when I hear the frustration of those who've been practicing for a long time. I mean, certainly frustration I know too, but and I remember when I was first trying out zazen, which happened to be exactly where I'm sitting now in Provincetown, all the sensations were so new that it was like a revelation. And then after I found the Village Zendo, which was just sort of shortly afterwards, and I began trying out longer and more formal periods of sitting during zazen kais and rohatsu and on my first retreat. It was all about for me what was a very, very, very difficult practice. And I was never sure that I was going to be able to do it, but I kept doing it anyway. And for a long time, really for years, zazen was something that I felt was difficult, and yet somehow, and for somewhat inexplicable reasons, I was determined to do. And since then, I've been in many, many different relationships to zazen. I think one of the sort of beautiful things about it is that it is really new and different every time you sit down, in part because you are different. And I've been especially drawn to the idea of Zen practice as a place where we can suspend the ideas of gaining or attaining something, cultivating the empty field, as Zen Master Hongzhi puts it, or the passage from the Heart Sutra that Shinryu Sensei invoked in his recent talk. No path, no wisdom, and no gain. No gain, and thus the bodhisattva lives prajna paramita with no hindrance in the mind. No hindrance, therefore no fear. cultivating the empty field, no hindrance in the mind. More recently, I've been sitting most mornings in the online Zendo since we started it. At first, really very rigorously every day, but things have gotten a bit more complicated in my life in the last few months. So sometimes I'm able to do it and sometimes not. The rhythm falters at times. But for me, it's the steadiest sitting with Sangha that I've done since I started practicing. In the early years, I sat pretty much every day, but alone, you know, and uh, and there's something about practicing with the Sangha that, well, I won't put words to it, but I feel like most of the people here who are people who show up frequently know that feeling. And there have been times recently when all of this sitting begins to seem like nothing at all. And sometimes it dissolves into the kind of nothing that I like, and sometimes it dissolves into the kind of nothing that I don't like. And I catch myself in some kind of moment of anxiety or despair or pointlessness. Like, what is all this for? And really, what is it that I want in those moments? To have gotten something, to have become something. I'm not sure. Ryotan Roshi gave a wonderful talk about this back in April. And in it, he pointed out that we're so used to using the part of our minds that is organized towards getting something that we can begin to expect that we'll get something from Zen, no matter how often the texts and teachers might say otherwise. Getting something is, the opposite of what we're doing here. And yet, as Rio pointed out, there's nothing hidden. There's nothing that's ever kept from us. So in Zazen, I feel like there's a precious opportunity. To me, in some ways, Zazen is like a lab or a studio where we can relax certain parts of ourselves and where we can relax our picking and choosing. And simply sitting down in meditation is Zazen, placing our bodies and minds in this position for 25 or 30 minutes. And in that state, we can practice not picking and choosing, especially by not labeling our Zazen itself as good or bad, not labeling our experience, whatever arises, as good or bad, as Zazen or not Zazen. Um, not attaching these kinds of words and concepts to what arises, to what our experience is. Nothing extra is needed and nothing hinders us. Zazen is simply experiencing yourself in each moment. It is simply being intimate with yourself. And as you become intimate with what you think of as yourself, at the same time, you naturally become intimate with everything that affects you, with everything that has ever affected you. Without effort, you become intimate with all of reality as it expresses itself right here, right now, in you, in me. And the distractions that you feel also arise from this larger reality. And your concentration, your moments of concentration arise from this larger reality. Distracted zazen, in my opinion, is not bad zazen. Concentrated zazen is not good zazen. Feelings arise, states arise. Some we enjoy, some we resist. Zazen, where you are sad or angry because the news you just read, is zazen that is intimate with how that news makes you feel. Zazen, where you fret about whether your zazen is good or bad, is uninhibitedly intimate with your own aspiration and your worry and your desire to hold something in your hand. And this too arises from the whole of reality. It is not separate. So let's go back to the koan one last time. Chao Chu, teaching the assembly, said, "The ultimate path is without difficulty. Just avoid picking and choosing." As soon as there are words spoken, this is picking and choosing. This is clarity. This old monk does not abide within clarity. Do you still preserve anything or not? At that time, a certain monk asked, "Since you do not abide within clarity, what do you preserve?" Chao Chu said, "I don't know either." The monk said, "Since you don't know, teacher, why do you nevertheless say that you do not abide within clarity?" Chao Chu said, "It is enough to ask about the matter, bow, and withdraw." Some things, as Chao Chu demonstrates, cannot be pinned down in words. It is enough to ask, to raise the question, and then bow and withdraw. So the Hsin Hsin Ming ends this way. This is the last few lines of it. The one is everything, everything the one. If your understanding is thus, what is left to accomplish? Faith and mind are undivided. Non-duality is both faith and mind. The way of words is cut off, leaving no past, no future, no present. If I open my hand and look at it, it holds nothing. But if I step back and I look at it from a little farther away, just a little farther away, or maybe a lot farther away, I can also see that it holds everything. It holds the room I'm in, and the sky above, and the earth below. It holds everything that I know and imagine and love and fear. There is nothing that is in my hand, and there is nothing that is not in my hand. There's that beautiful image of Uchiyama Roshi's, that zazen is simply opening the hand of thought. This opening hand, this open hand, is the easiest thing. It doesn't have to choose anything, one or another. The hand can't choose. Is the hand empty or is the hand full? There's no difference. When the question is asked, it is enough to bow and withdraw.